Welcome to the LeanBlog podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban, and you are listening to episode number 39 of the LeanBlog podcast for March 31st, 2008. Today's episode is part two of a recent conversation with Professor Jeffrey Liker from the University of Michigan and the author of many books about Toyota, including his most recent, Toyota Culture. We're going to be talking about some of the challenges that organizations face in trying to adopt a lean or a Toyota-type culture, and I hope you'll come back in a couple of weeks when I release part three of that discussion. If you have any feedback or questions or to find other podcast episodes, you can get directly to the podcast page by going to www.leanpodcast.org. As always, thanks for listening.
Now that there's been this really detailed, good study of Toyota, one of my blog readers had asked, I'm kind of paraphrasing the question, so is there an opportunity next to study some of the companies that have started or gotten further down the path in adopting some of these styles? You have a book from about 10 years back, Becoming Lean. Is there another book in the future, somewhere along the lines of becoming a new Toyota-type culture? Are there examples like that out there?
Yeah, well, I think that there probably are examples. There's other books already written, like there's a few business novels. One of my associates in France wrote The Gold Mine, which is about a company transforming itself, and there's a lot of those business novels out there of companies that have gone through transformation. In the last chapter of the Toyota Culture book, it turned out to be about a 50-page chapter that talks about the transformation process, and we have a few examples. But a book like I thought about, Becoming Lean Part 2 or something like that, and I think that would be worth doing. One of the problems I have is that it's so hard to find a good example. There's companies that have been at this for 10 years or 15 years even, and that have done really good things, but usually they really are still weak on the cultural side, and they still haven't convinced themselves that people are their most valuable resources. So they make a lot of improvements, and they really start to get it, and things start to click in specific factories, and then they mistreat the plant manager or decide that the person who became their lean expert, who's really learned a lot, is costing them too much, and they give them an early retirement package, and they lose their key leadership, and then they kind of have to go back to zero. Not really zero, but they regress. Or they have a bad quarter and miss their earnings reports and kick out all the consultants who are teaching them. So there's a lot of short-term knee-jerk reactions that kill the momentum. There's one company, Wire Mold, that's been written about a lot. That's a great case example, and you can learn a lot from Wire Mold in their journey, and they did everything almost as good as you can do it until they got bought out by a French company that systematically undid everything that had been done and fired everybody who knew about lean. So there's nothing about this that's permanent, that can't be undone by bringing in different leaders who don't understand. So anyway, I'm still searching for the companies that have been doing this for 10 years, really understand it's a culture, really make a big effort to maintain the culture and maintain the leaders, and keep on improving instead of going backwards and going on to some other fad.
I did a podcast last year with Bob Emiliani, who's one of the authors of the Wire Mold book, and it seemed to kind of prove that point. As soon as you write about somebody, there's that risk of...
It was a bummer for him. He had spent all that time studying them and wrote that great book, and then suddenly they're not doing it anymore, and all the people he wrote about are gone. Now, the thing is that what he wrote about, in fact, is still legitimate, because what he wrote happened, and they turned the company around, and they were really on the path to becoming a great company. So that you can't take that away because of what new owners did. But in fact, there's a lot less interest by people when you're talking about a company that's no longer very successful.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on the impact of some of the top American leaders within Toyota moving on to other things or retiring, Jim Press and Gary Convis among them. I would hope and assume that Toyota's culture is more established and more resistant to a couple of key people moving on. I was wondering what your thoughts are, if the culture will keep sailing along, or if there's some risk from even a Toyota losing some key leaders like that.
Well, certainly Toyota's not Superman or invulnerable,
right.
Or they have their kryptonite, and part of it is that they need a core group of leaders who really understand the Toyota way and live it and teach it. And guys like Jim Press and Gary Convis were two of the people who really lived it and understand it. But the other part about Toyota, again, this people value stream is churning along, and everybody's going through that people value stream, and they're being developed to different levels. So Toyota has about 60,000 people in North America, and then they have a lot of Japanese coming over. If there's a problem like a weakness someplace, they'll send over some people from Japan to reinforce the culture. So losing 2 or 3 people, frankly, out of 60,000 is barely noticeable. In the U.S., we would typically think that the more senior you are, the more serious it is to lose that person. Right. So you lose Jack Welch from GE, and there's a big question of can the company ever recover from that. That's not the case in Toyota. The leaders, they call it servant leadership, and I think I have in my book even the story of Gary Convis, and he becomes a vice president at NUMMI, and his Japanese sensei says to him, "Gary, you realize now that you're vice president, it means that you no longer have any power." And Gary realized that the higher up he went, the more distant he became from the shop floor and from the core activities of the company, and the more he had to find ways to be helpful and to support the people doing the value-added work, and his role became more of teaching and less of directing and making day-to-day decisions. So at some point, people like Gary Convis feel like, I've taught what I can teach, and I've got to step back. In fact, it's the next generation of leaders are not going to develop fully if I'm all around all the time, making decisions, and they keep on looking to me for answers. So at some point, you have to pull yourself away and let them struggle a little bit. Now, in Gary's case, he retired in the usual Toyota way like they would in Japan, and he's now a senior advisor, and he's half-time for 3 years, and he's still bopping around the company advising people, and he's playing an important role as a teacher and a mentor. Mm-hmm. Jim Press, it's more unusual that he just left and went to a competitor, and that doesn't happen in Japan. But Jim Press was also toward the tail end of his career at Toyota and not making daily decisions anymore. His main contribution is that he was made part of the inner core of managing directors, of senior managing directors, and he was the only American on that group, and only non-Japanese. So now they don't have that anymore, and they have to develop the next person who will play that role. But as far as all their operations and engineering and R&D and manufacturing, they would barely notice that these guys were gone. Their attrition rate is really very good. We have the data in the book. At least as of last year, they were the rate for all members in North America. The attrition rate per year was 1.7%.
Wow!
They're keeping over 98%, and for senior executives, it was 1.5%, or for the executive level. So they're keeping a lot of people and keeping a lot more. I'm dealing with companies now that want to be the next Toyota, and we do consulting and teaching, and we ask what their attrition rate is for their hourly people in their plants, and they say, well, I'm ashamed to tell you, but it's 35%.
Right.
And Toyota's is about 2%. So again, Toyota is a problem-solving company. So if they lose some people in a given year, they do a root cause analysis and they ask, what can we put in as a countermeasure to keep people, and then they work on that. And typically the companies I'm dealing with outside Toyota are saying things like, we never realized it was so important to keep people. We figured as long as somebody else came along and they had the background and credentials, it didn't really make any difference.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have an appreciation for the value of culture. That's what they were really telling me.
Yeah.
They figured an engineer is an engineer, a mechanic's a mechanic, and they'll lay somebody off just as quickly as they'll work to keep them.
Yeah.
So, that's part of it is just simply having the really deep understanding of the value of people, of that person, not of a person who has those skills, of that person who's been with us for 10 years and developed an understanding of our culture and fits in and knows problem solving and really knows how to contribute. Toyota does that, so they really work hard at keeping people. And the reason people stay are a number of reasons. One is, if you're in Georgetown, Kentucky, you live there and your family lives there, and they're the best employer in the area. So they work to be the best employer wherever they are in that local area. And they've been successful at doing that. For executives, some leave, some don't. The ones who stay will typically say, I'm learning every day, and it's a pleasure to come to work, and I can go someplace else and make twice as much money and be miserable.
Yeah. No, I don't have the whole list in front of me. I just started flipping through this morning Fortune magazine's new, top 100 companies to work for list, right. And I'm pretty certain Toyota's not on that list, which might be more of a function of them not taking the time to fill out whatever applications are required for that. Some of those companies had really high turnover rates, 30% range, but yet, because they have a great gym or something, they end up on that list. It seems like the Toyota approach to creating a great workforce or a great workplace goes beyond some of the perks and some of the things that
they're interested in how people are developed, how people wanting to stay because they keep on learning. They're interested in that commitment. They're not particularly interested in getting on winning awards or getting on external lists, but they do very intensively study their employees, and they keep on improving that as well. Yeah. Like Gallup does a lot of surveys for them, and they, like I said, they keep on improving. For example, they at some point figured out that customer satisfaction wasn't enough, that they could have a poor person giving a 5 on a 5-point scale of satisfaction and saying, this is a great place to work. But that just means that somehow nothing's feeling bad to them, or the pay is good enough, or maybe they don't have another alternative that's better. They decide that what they really wanted were engaged people,
right,
who actually were continually challenged and learning, and that was a different thing that had to be measured in a different way. So they started to try to find ways to measure engagement instead of satisfaction. So like I said, this is a continual process. And then what do you do with the measures? Let's say that you find that 93% of the employees are a 4 or 5 on some scale. What do you do with that data? You've got, from Toyota's point of view, you've got some number of people, 5 to 10%, who are defects, who are not happy. So they want 0 defects, so they're going to work on that. So what Toyota does in a plant is they get that data at the work group level, and then they feed back to the group leader the data for their people, and the data includes what their people are saying about them, what they're saying about other aspects of the job. And then the group leader now has a responsibility to use that for problem solving. And they have to go through all the data in detail. And again, a defect is a defect. It's not, only 5% of the people complain about this, I'm not going to worry about
right.
it. That's 5% defects.
Yeah.
So they go through intense problem solving I think it's twice a year, based on that feedback, as well as their daily checking in with employees, and they have various ways to do that. So there's a continuous improvement process in improving employee relations. Other companies, if they did a survey and had a good score, they would sit back and say, good, we're good, we don't have to work on it.
But it seems like there's a difference between saying we have 5% defects as opposed to 5% defective people, reporting the blame if what's wrong with them.
Right, that's another good point, is that the bias is always what is it about the system that allows employees to be unhappy or to make mistakes or to get hurt, not what is it about the person who causes them to screw up.
Right. And so that seems like just one of many examples of a mindset that's very fundamental, or it's really deeply ingrained in people that would be difficult to change the mindset in the course of hoping to adopt a more Toyota-type culture then.
Yeah, I mean, they have to think about continuous improvement and respect for people is going hand in hand, and that has to be every place in the company. And typically it's not, even if they're one of the great places to work. Mm-hmm. And they have to think, how can we start to work on that, start to make progress toward that, and be very honest with ourselves about where we're at any given point in time.
Thanks for listening. This has been the LeanBlog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.